Hello, collective. I'm doing a dream interpretation. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel the need to. And thanks for checking out my content. So, I have been up for a while. I didn't know if I wanted to actually talk about this said dream or not, but I felt like it was important to talk about, especially because of my most recent reading where I was talking about, I'm so out of breath, where I was talking about the Magdalene and Isis and Egyptian mythology. So I wanted to go ahead and knock it out. So in the past, I had this vision or this dream, if you will, where I worked for the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh in my specific dream was Russell Simmons. And I know that sounds weird, but he was Russell Simmons. Well, at least he looked like that physically in the face and everything like that. And at that time, I had just been hired, if you will, or brought in to work for Russell Simmons, but he was in this Pharaoh-like energy in Babylon or Egypt. And I had just got hired on to work at Def Jam. I think that's the label that he had, right? And so it only makes sense because I was talking about the demiurge being like a cat. And anyway, so in this new vision or dream or whatever you want to call it, I was actually stationed with Kimora Lee Simmons. Now, if you're not familiar with Kimora is the wife or the partner of Russell Simmons. And I know there's been a lot of speculation, but he essentially took a foreign woman from, I'm going to say he plucked her from obscurity. He didn't actually pluck her. No. Somebody else had taken wives of their choosing, and who had taken wives of their choosing was Karl Lagerfeld, Chanel, an empire, a dynasty, this big conglomerate, adorning people in figs and so on and so forth. So she would have been taken by Adam, or men that would have made themselves, be like the fallen or whatever have you. They would have made themselves be like lords or princes or kings or whatever have you, but they were essentially ground workers, which is fine. Because I was a worker too. I worked for Def Jam. Think Billy. But more importantly, think like spiritualists, right? Like high priestess type of energy. But I was working for Kimora, and Kimora had like packed up a bus, and she had took her children, Aoki. So I think of Amen, but things could be crumbling. But nonetheless, we had packed up this bus like well, people could have thought somebody was weak or somebody has questions about the Ars Goetia. Honey, I don't know. We had packed up. Now I know why that show over there is on the horror tab, with the Kimora's life back in the Fab Link. But nonetheless, she had packed up everybody, and I had came along with her, and she had packed up her children. Not packed them up, but everybody was coming along for, I think it was her birthday or something like that. Now, Kimora is a Taurus, so I do feel like I'm talking about a Taurus-like energy. She had packed up her 2 children, all her children, and we were, I don't know, Colorado. It seemed like it was cold, but not really. It was like a cabin or something. It was really weird. And we did eventually experience a knock at the cabin. And I want to talk about that in a second, but excuse me. We were all there. And I happened to be downstairs, but as a spiritualist, even though I was letting the children run free, right? Because they are the Pharaoh's children. So, they're able to do what they want, do what they will. And, I kind of just keep everything in order spiritually, but I'm not really their boss. I don't really tell them what to do because they are not my children. They're not my children. And I'm going to get to my children in a second. But they were the Pharaoh's children, but Kimora would have already been married before, technically. Kimora would have been married to a dynasty before, a white dynasty, Karl, but she would have been taken, I'm going to say against her will. She was like a child bride type of thing, a muse, okay, so on and so forth. And But at this point in time, even though, he took a wife of his choosing, but somebody else that took a wife of their choosing, it's like she had got passed around a little bit. But at this time, she belonged to the Pharaoh. So I was like, okay, I'm on my job. I work for the Pharaoh. So therefore, I work for you. But, I don't really tell you what to do. But I ended up walking up the stairs. And I ascended up the stairs. Now, I don't know if that was metaphorical, like I ascended up the stairs in her company at this point. Baby Fat, cherubs, or, whatever the hell, the demiurge, the archons. I ascended up the stairs. And at the top was Kimora, a little madness, a little badness type of thing. She would have been this hypergamous teacher, think sheer repose, think, whatever have you. But she was getting intimate with some young guy. And I remember telling her to stop because I just seen, I don't know if the guy was a man or a girl. It looks like it didn't understand the assignment. But it was on its knees, worshiping, fellation. I don't know what it was doing. But I remember telling it to stop because that's not right, That's not what she was supposed to be doing, yada, yada, yada. Now, that person that didn't understand the assignment, whether it be a boy or a girl that was on his knees worshiping Kimora or like Taurus or, sex or whatever the hell, his job or his work, New World Order, whatever have you, it didn't like that I had intervened. But that was my job. That was my job when it pertained to spirituality, to be like, hey. And then I think Kimora was either still with Russell or with Jaimin. But the thing that she was supposed to be focusing on was her family or her children and the business and the dynasty and everything else, right? That's how she got her start. But the person descended down the stairs. They turned completely evil. That wanted to have this new world order, this oral fixation, man or woman. I don't know what it was. But it had turned completely evil, and it had descended down the steps, and it was like out of its mind, and it had left. And I remember trying to like secure the cabin, like secure the house, and I was putting locks on the door. I was having a hard time initially putting locks on the door because the door was like unlocked or something like that, and I was having a really hard time doing that. So I was putting locks on the door. I was putting, it was weird. It was really specific how intricate the lock system was, but I was putting that on the door. And it was weird because the person had showed up with a knife, like, this is us. But you would have thought that lesbian or that man with that oral fixation or Pac, you would have thought that it would have been the real thing if you ever seen the show Us, or the movie Us. What was I talking about that? In need of Gabriel or Abrahamic grace. It was needing that. But it showed up with a knife. And it was banging on the door. Showed up with a knife, showed up with a weapon. And I remember, like, no, you can't get in. I was like holding the door open. I was holding the door locked. I was keeping the door locked, keeping the door secure. And what else happened? Kimora's children, Ming and Naoki, her son, so on and so forth, because she had her son with Jaimin at this point. They came to the door, and we were all, keeping it secure. But it was like off the patio. I think somebody was dealing with like not perverts, but registered sex offenders or something like that. Gentiles, honey, I don't know what it is. I don't know how we could fix that, but that person came with the knife, they came with a weapon, and they was banging. They was upset. They was upset with me, and they was upset with Kimora, and it was just upset. They was upset. And I remember like the energy had went away because it was like some tussle, and the person had went away. They had the knife or whatever have you. Now it wasn't death. It wanted to give off that appearance of Billy or a Reaper. I worked for Def Jam. Def did it. That was like just some kid weirdo. But it did look like Tupac for a minute. So it was like not 50-50. The way that energy was banging on the door, it had did all that. It worked all those jobs, did all those sexual favors, did all that, and it thought that it was going to get some like money or something like that. I don't know what it thought it was going to get, but it was like, yada yada yada. Now, I personally, it's nothing personal, but I could care less about Kimora, and I could have cared less about Kimora's kids. At that point, I was only protecting myself. They just happened to be a part of my house or home, so they also got protected. But anyway, so I had went upstairs and I had told Kimora, because she didn't even care. She didn't even care that, that person was doing all that. So I had ascended up the steps again, because that person had that POC or lesbian, whatever, it had disappeared, and with his weapon, like us, but the people that's down below, Buddha, the teaching of Buddha, honey, I have no idea. I don't know who it was. But the thing is, when I had went back upstairs, because that energy had disappeared, but a new group of people had showed up. Brown people, white people, like they had showed up. And they were all in that same energy, bang, 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 bang on the front door. And I went upstairs, and Kimora had she was like, okay, well, let's go get on a private jet. It's like the Days in the East or something like that. Let's go get on a private jet, the Coast Guard. I'm like Alpha, yada, yada, yada. And we're going to go here, and we're going to go here, we're going to go here, because she needed to get prepared for this like fashion show. It was like the creme de la creme, top of the tops, honey. So, the eyes will see, but more importantly, they would have made deals with certain spirits and principalities and everything else. But she was like telling the future. It was so weird the way that Kimora was telling the future, because she was taking pictures like we were already there. So I was like, because she could tell the future, I knew that we had made it or whatever. I don't know, got something to do with Scorpio. I knew that we had made it. Mariah, Aries, honey, I don't know what it is. Blue Flame, honey, I don't know. So we get out safely. We get on the private jet, and I realized that she has a new young thing. She could not help herself. She had got with a new young thing. Now, things might be out of order, but essentially it's not the same story. We got on the private jet, and she had a new dark skin. She had a type, like dark skin, and she was pregnant. Kimora was pregnant, but Kimora got to be like 50 years old. And I was looking at her like, why are you pregnant? And we were on a private jet, and she was talking to the people in the cockpit. Bitch, don't call me Shirley. I don't know, it's artificial. Somebody could lose. And she was feeling sick to her stomach, but she had on this gray little dress, and she had on sunglasses, and she had on no makeup. And I remember looking at her skin going, ew, you put your makeup on. But it wasn't like me. I normally don't never have makeup. Kimora always has on makeup. She's always dressed to the nines. So it was weird. And she was dealing with, he had to be like maybe 30, maybe 20. He was very, very young. And he was closer to her children's age than he was to hers. But she was pregnant. But she was excited that she was pregnant, because when she got with Jaimin, Kimora didn't want a son. She wanted a daughter. She wanted a daughter that was like Asian fused African, like Afro-Asiatic origin type of thing. She wanted to like make her. It was weird, but she wanted it to be a girl, because I remember she was so excited, because she's like, this is my last shot, hopefully it's a girl, because she wanted a dark skinned Asian looking child. Because the children that she had with Russell, I don't know why this is coming out. I don't know. She wanted a designer baby. The children, or Sophia, Lily, Noelle, but hers looked totally different. That demiurge, I don't know. It was very specific what it was wanting to create, but it wanted it to be a girl, because the children that it had with Russell didn't give that color. She wanted that really dark, rich, melanated skin with her Asian features. And so, I was on a private jet, so we ended up in Paris or London. We ended up somewhere, and they were having this wealthy fashion show, and Kimora showed up in feathers, peacocking. But the way she was peacocking, I thought she would have been a male. Because what I've seen is with the color vibrant peacock feathers, honey, she would have been a man. But she was peacocking. They always peacocking, and everybody had their Hermes bags, like they were messengers of the gods, honey. They would have had people swearing by the river Styx, swearing their life away, so on and so forth. And it was weird, because I had to leave that party. And when I left that party, I started to be with, I'm going to say, my own children, because I started to think that they were my children. They were my children, but I think it was because of the demiurge. I don't know what it was. It was their mind, because I was only in spirit, but they were revolting. They were revolting. Businesses. It didn't matter if it was large businesses or small businesses. They were revolting. They were tearing everything down and going against the status quo. Young children. Like, think Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory, because somebody had told, a little girl had told another little girl that was kind of scared to pick up glass or to pick up a rock and throw it. Was kind of scared because she's like, am I going to get in trouble? And a little girl came into her like, this is your golden ticket. This is your opportunity to not be so poor. You know, either it's like liberty or death type of thing. And they were revolting. But they were throwing rocks because they didn't actually have guns and nothing like that. They were small children. And they were poor in Paris, like laying on the streets. They were poor, orphan. I don't know. And the business owners would shoo them away, like, go away, yada, 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 yada. I saw something like I Am, because it was really something specific about his eye. Oh, no. Let me back up. So the kids, there was a reporter there. A reporter like JC, a reporter that's how the cookie crumbles, would have been telling the children that they were sinning, yada, 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 casting stones and doing all this stuff and going against the archons. They actually would have been going against the archons because the archons would have been standing in their way like, you can't win. You can't win, because they would have been in control of destiny. They would have been in control of fate. They would have been in control of everything. And those children would have been just starving. Those were my children. They were my children. Mind you, I no longer worked for death, so I worked for life. And so they were living human and, yada, yada, yada. So the thing is, there was a reporter there, and she was an older woman or something. Bitch, I don't know, I think kids next door. I don't know what it was. She had went to a water fountain where you could make a wish or something, but she was cleaning off her stuff because some food or something shattered and had got on her. And so they all had decided, all the kids had all decided to get in line. The line had formed. So this could have something to do with spiritually on the other side. Maybe it's a message for somebody. But when they had got in line, the reporter was in line, and for some reason Taylor Swift was in line. I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift. I don't know. But the kids, at like the count of 3, it was like a countdown. They motherfucking stabbed Taylor Swift, the reporter, everything. They like attacked the adults or the wealthy, I'm going to say. And somebody on their bike, Freemason, Illuminati, I have no idea, had rolled up. But it was like, I am. Because there was something about his eye, but it was like a white messenger. I don't know what it is. And Taylor Swift had asked, like, and I was just standing there in spirit. I don't know. I didn't really care one way or the other. But nonetheless, I don't know. It could have been Spider-Man. It could have been, what's his name? A Nazi over there, wanted to pander with those. Because I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to tie it up real nice for you guys. There's a Moor, or like a father, or a Libra, or justice system. I don't know what it is. But I know that the person that got stabbed. And they had asked somebody, like, help me. Because Taylor Swift was just bleeding out. She was just bleeding the fuck out. And I didn't care. And, I was only in spirit, so there was only so much that I could do. And I was already on the side of the children that was casting stones. Because to me, they reminded me so much of Jesus. The way that they were voting, the money exchange and flagations, the way they was willing to just die or, get what they needed. I was like, hey, I'm here for it. So the thing is, the man, he's like, when he's looked at those kids, he was like, I can't stop them. Let me go get the police. It was so weird because the British police, or what are they called when they work for the castle, or the monarch? They showed up, and they were on some weird animal that I had never seen before. I think it was like a mammoth. Honey, I don't know what animal. A dinosaur, charismatic speakers. Honey, I don't know what animal they were on, but they were not on horses. They were on some big ass animal. But I had woke up at that point. Now, I wanted to tie it all in with chaos or Zeus or the blood of Zeus, so on and so forth, because of just the setting, right? And how in the show of Netflix, Chaos, Hera was getting fellatio. It was that type of thing. And I would have been protecting her children, her actual children, and they would have been like demigods. But I feel like they actually didn't have a lot of power. The power would have came from their actual father. The power wouldn't have come from Hera. The power would have come from their actual father, who would have been a descendant of God, or an intermediary for God, or just a king, and had all this respect, so on and so forth. But I do think that it was human at first. I do think that Zeus was human at first. And somehow, some way would have found himself in Egypt and would have gotten priests and priestesses, so on and so forth. That could kill, could steal. I didn't steal, but could kill, so on and so forth. The thing is, I didn't care much about Hera or Gemini or the lovers. I didn't care about Isis. I don't know about those brides taking wives of your choosing, sister wives, honey. I really didn't care. The thing is, I was there. But more importantly, when I would have told them to stop, like, y'all need to stop, Hera and Poseidon, y'all need to stop. You need to be stopped. You need to stop. When I would have sent it up to those levels. I'm not a Fantasia. I'm not a pig. I'm only ever in spirit. But when I would have told that energy to stop, they didn't respect me. And it was like, I went forth and I was like, okay, I'm going to show you what chaos is really all about. Because y'all's not doing chaos. I'm going to show you a revolution. I'm going to show you a riot. I'm going to show you false idols falling. I'm going to show you that. But I had to leave behind the realm of the gods. I had to leave behind the top of the top. I had to leave that energy behind to be here. But I was here with a purpose, spiritually. And it was like I needed to send a message back to the top. I needed to use those at the bottom to send a message up at the top. That, I'm here. I don't know. It was just weird. I just started thinking about that. Because those motherfuckers started thinking alpha and about themselves. And I was like, well, I'm going to use this generation alpha to really do some shit. I'm going to really make alpha do some shit. And both of my children, ironically enough, are alpha generations. And it was like, I'm going to make them do something. And so, it was just weird. I don't know. That's just what I was dealing with at the time. But that's all I got for now.